Alright you guys, welcome back to the YouTube Barber Academy. I know that a lot of you guys are lacking some confidence when it comes to the shears. Well, that's what today's video is all about. So maybe you're starting to figure out the blending, the fading, the clipper work, the lining, but now you're having a little bit of trouble when you reach the top. So today's video, how to cut the top. Alright you guys, so the first things we're going to have to do is we're going to have to revisit some of the fundamentals. That's why we're going to take it to the board. But before we go into the board, let's just talk about holding your shears. Take your ring finger, put it in there, thumb, and now we know. But we want to make sure that when we cut with shears, we're only moving the thumb, so that means that the top blade moves and the bottom blade stays still. This will help you become more accurate. This will help you cut yourself less when you're doing point cutting or more advanced techniques. Side note, there is actually a difference between left-handed shears and right-handed shears. So if I face this shear towards me, you'll see that the adjustment right here is facing towards me. When I open this up, you'll notice that the back part of the blade opens up. If I was left-handed and I just flipped them around, you'll notice that it's actually going to be opposite. The front is moving, which is definitely going to cause the hair to get pushed instead of cut in a lot of cases, and it's definitely going to give you problems. So if you are left-handed, make sure you get a left-handed shear. A good exercise for you guys to try at home, if you're new at this, comb, palm, cut, comb, palm, cut. All right, this looks really simple. It's not. It takes practice, right? Like anything. So comb, let me just slow it down. I'll put my thumb in just for a second while I cut, take my thumb out and palm it in my hand. All right? So now that we know how to properly palm our shears and know you don't need to be doing any of this flipping back and forth, this is just going to waste time, possibly poke a client, give yourself an issue, drop a shear. In order to properly understand how to cut the top, you need to know what you're doing. You are actually doing a portion of a 90-degree haircut. So what is 90 degrees? Well, it's not just some arbitrary number. It's actually a protractor where if I measured this, 90 degrees would be straight out from the head, right? And this would be 0 and this would be 180, right? And if you guys are cutting women's hair, 45 degrees would be a graduated cut. So every single one of these angles is how we maintain consistency in hair cutting, right? So if we're going to maintain the angle of 90 degrees and I put this protractor alongside of the head, not talking about the long layers, graduated, or blunt cut, what we are actually talking about is just coming straight off from the head. So at any point where you come straight off from the head, that's 90 degrees, right? So I'm just coming straight off from the head. And if I was all the way over here, even this would be straight off from the head. Even if I was underneath here, that would be 90 degrees straight out from the head. Now the interesting thing about going 90 degrees straight out from the head is that if I was to connect these lines, it's actually going to mimic the shape of the scalp. So what that essentially means is that your fingers are going to reflect the exact position of the scalp as you hold it out. All right? Stay with me. You might be getting a little confused. It's cool. Understanding how to come straight out from the head is very important, and that's why I'm spending additional time showing you to reflect the same shape as the scalp is going to help you improve your accuracy. Now, this coming straight out from the scalp is actually not 90 because 90 obviously is straight out and this is tipped. Same thing, if I was to pull this and pull this hair over, what's going to actually happen if I pulled this hair over here and I cut this piece of hair right here, right? Only this hair was actually cut at 90. This hair was over directed, and when it comes back, let's just mark it right here. When it comes back, look how much longer it got when I mark it right here. It's actually this long compared to this long. So in essence, if you're holding large sections, it's not going to hurt you any. It's actually going to be fine, but you need to realize that you're going to have to still cut this hair. Now that I got that point across, let's actually get into the strategy or the technique of how to actually do this. So I see a lot of people really overcomplicate this online. There's no reason for it. This is actually a really, really easy thing to do, and I'm going to show you a technique that's going to work for practically everybody from now on. So the first thing you want to do, and I'm looking at a top view. So his nose is essentially right there, just to get an idea of where we're looking, all right? All right, so in essence, what we're going to do is we're going to create a mohawk guideline, and we are going to cut this hair all the way back. All right, now another thing that you want to pay attention to is when you're combing it, you're either holding it with your fingers or you're cutting it, or you're holding it with the comb again. You're not setting it down and losing it. You want to hold it, comb it, cut it, hold it, comb it, cut it. So you're always holding it and you never set it down so you don't lose it. So it mimics the same shape as the scalp and we're good. We've just created our first guideline, and that is known as a stationary guideline. So we're just going to pick up that hair beside it and we're actually going to work horizontally, moving this way. All right, so the only thing I'm really concerned about is this section here. And I'm moving horizontally and I'm using this mohawk section to get my length. So once I've continued this, now I actually have two sections that have become guides. All right, so this gets into my ABC method. I kind of consider cutting the entire top being A, cutting around the parietal ridge being B, and C being cutting around the very bottom. And that's when we're cutting an entire haircut in a uniform length, which I have a couple tutorials on and I'll list them in the cards. All right, so we're just going to continue jumping off to the other side and we're going to keep cutting, working our way back. Now our guide has gotten much larger and we're going to keep cutting and we're going to keep moving it out, out, out. So essentially what we're doing is we're starting in the middle and we are transferring just slightly off to the edge and we're standing behind the client, working our way back, but we're really only working in these very small rows. So that's kind of what's hard to understand when you first watch somebody do this, because you're like, how are they being consistent? And as a matter of fact, if you use this technique, you're actually working with two guidelines. You're working with a stationary, which you initially created, but as you direct this hair back, you actually are working with a traveling guideline as well. Now, being that I stood behind him and I cut the hair this way, right? I need to cross-check it by standing this way, and you're going to find that there's probably a couple different varying degrees of length. That's fine, that's normal. Cut them and make sure it's even. This technique is very, very easy, and you will get the entire top cut properly in no time. It's not really super common for men to wear bangs anymore, but it was. And if you ever encounter a client who wears his bangs down on his face, this is what you need to do. You need to be careful, because if you cut all this hair before the way I showed you, you're not even paying attention to the exterior length. All right, so let's show you something that's like a tiny bit more complicated, but stick with me. He is a happy client because he's with me and I'm going to take good care of him. All right, just for the sake of him having bangs, we decided to cut his bangs right above his eyebrows. Maybe we point cut it, whatever. We understand. This is just an example. Now, you will notice that if I go back to my top view, I almost always, as a rule of thumb, leave this portion, which this is his nose, I leave this portion out of it, right? And I just showed you guys how to do this whole 90-degree cut. So we cut all this hair, whatever length you want. Now, all we're going to do is we're going to go back to the front. We're going to stand off to the side. And we are going to simply lift his bangs up that we've already established a length. So this length, you're not going to cut. No, you are not going to cut this length, because this is the bangs that we just created that length, right? And here's your interior length. So generally, if you've done this properly, you have the shape of the scalp. If you've done this properly, the other hair is cut and it's following the same shape as the scalp, the way it's supposed to. Now what you're probably going to see is you're going to see something that kind of looks like this, a bunch of long hair. Now, the easy part, you're going to simply connect your exterior guide to your interior guide. So it's literally that simple. You're just going to stand off to the side and you're going to do this in several sections. So the first section is going to be out here and you're going to connect it, 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 and you're going to connect it. And what this is going to do is it's going to stop him from having those like Dumb and Dumber looking bangs, and it's actually going to give him a much more soft and potentially texturized looking bang, so that if you are not careful, you could make a simple mistake by cutting all that hair holding it straight up. So that is pretty much the essence of cutting the top. I realize we just covered an awful lot, and it might be a little confusing to some of you. And watching tutorials can only get you so far. So what you need to do now, if you need to practice this, go to eBay, buy yourself a cheap mannequin, and get some reps in. And you will be cutting the top with confidence the next time you deal with a client who wants them shears on top. And I know the question is going to come up, so before I leave, I'll just say all the shears I use are from Shear Police. If you go to shearpolice.com, you enter code Eddie, you will save 10%, which is actually a pretty good savings. And I always recommend that every barber has 2 pairs of shears, one that's at least around 7 inches to do shear over comb, and one that's smaller and more manageable, maybe around 5 inches, so that you can accurately point cut without risking cutting your fingers, which we never do, ever. So, alright you guys, if this video helped, please share it around, because you guys know YouTube hates me, and they hate people who actually teach. So if you guys can do me a little favor, hit the thumb up, click the subscribe, and maybe share this to somebody if you know anybody who can use it. Other than that, I'll see you guys in my future videos. Peace. Wait a minute, before you guys go, I want to invite you to hit that bell, hit subscribe, and stick around, because we're going to go live all the time. It's far more interactive, it's a lot more intuitive, you'll learn a lot more, and we'll go through this video and many others as we continue to grow. We build off each lesson from the last week, so don't miss out on that opportunity. It's free, it's fun, and we're going to have a good time and a lot of guests, and we do giveaways. So I encourage you guys, hit subscribe. Other than that, man, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in another video. Peace.